Okay, so welcome back. Last session, PLG Disrupt Day 1 is about to finish with the one and only and the best, David Apple, Head of Customer Success at Notion. So he will talk about building product-led sales and CS teams for SaaS. And in this session by PLG Disrupt, David Apple, the first customer success and sales hire at both Notion and Typeform, will be sharing his learnings about how to build sales and CS teams for product-led organizations. David, it's such an honor to have you with us here, and we can't wait to listen to your amazing presentation.
Thank you very much. You're far too kind. But
Okay. I'll give you the booth, okay?
Cool, thanks.
Okay, bye.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. So as you just heard, my name is David Apple. I'm the head of customer success at Notion. And today I'm going to talk about my experience and recommendations in building out customer success and sales teams from the ground up, specifically in SaaS businesses that are product-led. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about my relevant background, and then I'm going to go through 5 parts of building out a team that I've found particularly impactful. So first of all, my relevant background. So there's my current role at Notion. I've been with Notion for about 1.5 years now. And previously I was at Typeform for almost 5 years. Both of these companies are what most people would consider a product-led growth company in the sense that they quickly grew to millions of users, mostly driven through organic growth because people love both of these products. I joined both companies when the company was less than 15 employees. And I was the first member of the sales and customer success teams responsible for building those teams out. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context about the presentation. And the topics I want to cover today are these 5 milestones in a journey. The first one is focus. Then it's getting to know our customers, how to engage with our customers, how to close the loop with product, and finally, the people side of things. So the first thing I want to talk about is focus. And the reason I'm starting with focus is, on one hand, I think it's probably the most important thing to get right to set yourself and your team up for success. It's probably the most obvious of what I'm going to talk about, but it's also the thing that I've definitely gotten wrong several times. So I thought it would be relevant to share my experience there. The challenge when you're at the early stages is that basically you have literally everything to build, and there's no shortage of ideas of what you could build that could bring value. There's a lot of low-hanging fruits. And the mistake that I made is going to a conference, maybe a virtual conference like this one, and coming back with tons of new ideas and then trying to implement everything at once. And what I discovered is trying to do a lot of things at the same time ended up us not doing any of them particularly well. And it was much more valuable, as I learned, to just choose 1 or 2 things to do and do them well. So again, that sounds pretty obvious, but I promise you I've gotten it wrong, and I hope you won't. From a tactical perspective, when I set goals with my team, of course, we're only choosing 2 or 3 objectives every quarter. But something I've started getting in the habit of doing is creating also a list of non-objectives. So these are topics that may have come up when we were doing our brainstorm of what the objectives could be this quarter, but we decided not to do. And what I found is when I didn't actually list them and saying we're not doing this quarter, they always found a way of creeping back into our workload and diluting our focus away from the 2 or 3 things we chose to do. So creating this list helps you maintain that boundary and say, no, we're not going to work on this quarter. We can consider it again next quarter. Cool. So that's a brief thing I wanted to share about focus. The next thing I want to talk about is getting to know your customers. And the goal here is to figure out how to build your intuition around how your customers perceive your product, what resonates with them, and how you can set them up for success. So the first aspect of getting to know your customers, unfortunately, there's no shortcut to it, is you need to speak with them. So when I joined Typeform and also when I joined Notion, I started by conducting customer interviews. And the way I conducted the interviews was a little bit different from maybe what you might expect. It was very loosely based on the job to be done framework, where my goal was less focused on understanding what features they liked or what pain points they had, but rather focused on the why they chose our tool, what problems they were trying to solve for their business, and how they assess the value that we're bringing them. And I find that those conversations are much more helpful for me to figure out how to pitch our product to future customers and also how to set our existing customers up for success. The second aspect of getting to know our customers is to look at the data. So there's two kind of broad sets of data that are important to look at. One is the behavioral data. So when you see customers that are successful, what are they doing that other customers are not doing, and vice versa. And the other side is the firmographic data. So which profile of customers are most likely to be successful, from which geography, what company size, et cetera. And when you have both of those data sets, then you can create the first version of your ideal customer profile. And creating ideal customer profiles can feel a little bit intimidating. It certainly was for me at the beginning. But I'd recommend starting with something relatively straightforward and simple like this. So in this example, we have Waldo. He's based in the US. He works in SaaS. He's a VP of marketing of a company between 11 and 250 employees. And his use case is lead gen forms. And what's great about creating these ideal customer profiles is it allows us to create alignment with other departments. So for example, we can share this with marketing and align with marketing on what are the ideal profiles of customers that we want marketing to be attracting. We can align with product on which customers are we trying to build our product for and for which specific use cases. For sales, as I mentioned before, it also helps us inform our sales pitch. And from the customer success side, it helps us understand which use cases we want to promote to which user to make them stickier or to make them more likely to expand. Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to engage with our customers. And the challenge here is how do we engage with the right customer with the right message at the right time? The first step of doing this is segmenting your customer base. And I like to use this simple model. Simple is often best. So basically the way I segment our customers is in a high touch segment, a low touch segment, and tech touch. And what I mean by high touch is customers that I want to be proactively engaging with and offer kind of like a white glove service to and build an ongoing relationship with. So there are best customers or highest potential value customers. Low touch customers are what I would call just in time. So there we're not focused on building an ongoing relationship with them, but rather we're focused on helping them achieve a specific outcome at a specific moment in time in their journey. And lastly, we have the tech touch segment. So for them, it's fully automated and scalable. So each customer we put in this bucket should not have an incremental cost to our business. So once we've segmented our customers into these buckets, the next step is to take our customer journey and break it down into stages of onboarding, adoption, etc. Once you've broken it into stages, for each stage, you can decide what does success look like for a customer at that stage, and how are we going to help drive that customer to success? So you create these touch points of when you want to engage with your customers. So in this example, we have at the end of onboarding, someone reaches the end of onboarding and hasn't invited anybody else to collaborate with. So obviously we want to engage with them and inspire them to do that. So how are we going to engage with them? I'd recommend reverting back to your segmentation model, and based on which bucket they fall into, you engage with them in a different way. So if they're high touch, they're your most valuable customers, you want to get on a call and help them through it. If they're low touch, maybe you want to send an automated email, but there's a reply to, so that a percentage of them will reply to your team and you can engage with them. And if it's tech touch, maybe it's a fully automated email with no reply to, just pointing them to a Help Center article or a video. Great. I hope this was clear. The next thing I wanted to talk about is how to close the loop with product. And I think this is one of the most impactful things that a sales and customer success team can do, especially in the early stages of a product-led growth company. Because ultimately, it's through improvements to our product that we're better able to close larger deals. And it's through improvements in our product that we're able to better retain and expand our customers. So making sure that we're representing the voice of our customer and closing that loop with product is very important. So the first step in operationalizing that is creating a consistent tagging process. And for those of you who aren't familiar with tagging, what I mean by tagging is basically a way to categorize your customer feedback in a consistent way. And when I say consistent tagging, what I mean is using the same tagging system across all the different channels where you're receiving customer feedback. So your sales team should use the same tagging as your customer success team, as your support team, as your NPS feedback, as your churn survey, et cetera, et cetera. If you use the same tagging system across all those different channels, you're now able to aggregate the data and compare apples to apples across those different channels. And if you can aggregate the data, you can start identifying trends. You're able to say, it turns out that the #1 reason from churn is also the #3 reason that customers tell our sales team is a blocker, and it's also come up in 50 support tickets. And it's that type of data across different channels and consistently month on month that helps inform decisions and helps influence the product roadmap and ultimately helps you and your team build a better product for your customers. Great. The last section I wanted to talk about is the people side of things. And of course, it sounds cliche to say people are the most important aspect of the team, but it's very true. And I wanted to share a few frameworks that I found helpful in building my teams. So the first concept I wanted to share is the concept of maturity. And here I'm referring to the maturity of your team or your business. And the idea here is that when someone's faced with a blank page that they have to create on, some people get really excited and can't wait to start building and creating. Other people can feel a little bit paralyzed and want to have guiding lines to follow or to color in between. And when you're at the very early stages of your business, you need to hire those people that get excited about the blank slate and are eager to build and to wear many different hats. That's the first stage, and that's the profile you want for the first stage. The second stage is then once you've built the foundations of the processes, then you are continuously building new processes on top of that or iterating on the ones you have to improve them. And that's another profile of more like a grower rather than a builder. And then the last stage is which takes a long time to reach. I haven't necessarily reached it with Typeform or Notion, but it's when you have all your processes and all your playbooks running well, and you just want to hire people to come in and only execute. And basically the idea here is when you're in your early stages, if you bring in somebody who has a ton of years of experience and has been a high performer at a company like a Salesforce or a Microsoft, they may not be the right profile to be at that early stage to build. And that's something that's really important to test for in your interview process. The next concept I want to talk about is this idea of lenses. So the idea here, I borrowed it from a book I read, is if you look at the world through a telescope versus a microscope versus your own eyes, you're looking at the same world, but you're seeing it in 3 very different ways. And with that same analogy, when you're trying to solve a problem, I find it very valuable to have team members who have different lenses, and in other words, different experiences, different backgrounds, different perspectives, because I always find that we solve the problems in a more creative and a more complete way when we have those different lenses rather than hiring only people that think like me. And the last thing I wanted to share is this concept of a triple bottom line. I borrowed this concept from my previous career as a sustainability engineer. And when we were building buildings, rather than looking at the success of a building only through the lens of how successful it was financially, we also looked at how it performed environmentally and also how it impacted the local society. And when I look at the success of my team, of course, I'm looking at the business impact in terms of revenue and retention, et cetera. But I also look at the cost efficiency and the team engagement, how motivated the team is. And I like to think of the sustainability of the success of my team as a multiplication of those 3 factors, so that if any of those 3 is trending towards 0, basically the whole equation is trending towards 0. So if I'm hitting my revenue numbers and we're doing it in a cost-effective way, but the team's burning out, that is not a sustainable way to continue building the team. Cool. So To close, I want to share my top 5 takeaways from those 5 points I shared. The first one is around focus. Don't just make it clear what you're going to do, also make it clear what you're going to say no to. The second point is around getting to know your customers, speak to them, and make sure you're understanding their desired outcomes with your product. The third one is around engagement. Make sure that you're not treating all customers the exact same way and that you're engaging differently based on your segmentation model. The fourth one is the feedback loop. Make sure you systematize tagging so that you can aggregate the data across channels and influence the roadmap. And lastly, the people side, make sure that when you're hiring, you're taking into account your team's maturity and finding the right fit based on that. And that's what I had prepared today. I think we have a little bit of time for Q&A. Thank you all for attending, and I'll look forward to the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, David, for this insightful presentation. Indeed, so much knowledge packed in so little, such a few minutes, of time. I have one question to ask you. So PLG is first and foremost related to the go-to-market practices. And how do you see the transformation of sales teams going forward the next 5 years? Is there the tendency to actually follow a PQL model versus a sales-led?
Yeah, I don't really think of PQL or sales-led necessarily different. It's depending on your circumstances. At both Typeform and Notion, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of inbound. We have a lot of signups, like millions of users. And it makes more sense to be focused on the inbound and converting our existing users to team plan and then to enterprise plan, which is more like the PQL motion that you mentioned. I think at scale, it probably at some point does make sense for companies to figure out their outbound model and run them both in parallel, especially when you want to go up market and maybe you're not yet attracting in your product-led growth cycle. You're not attracting the kind of customers that you actually want to sell to in the longer term, so that you start learning from them and learning why they're not buying your product. But I haven't, at Typeform, we never ended up doing that. And at Notion, I think we're still a little bit away from doing that.
Okay, I see. So I really want to thank you for your contribution. And I think this is the end of our session. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really insightful, and I'm grateful to have you here. I wish you all the best and have a great day. I think it's morning there, right?
Yeah, it's 3:30 p.m. So I'll enjoy my afternoon. Okay,
here in Athens, it's 1:30 around, so in the morning. So
yes, yeah, time for you to go to sleep.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your contribution. Okay, and we hope to see you in the future.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that's the end of day one. PLG Disrupt day one is finally officially over. We're so happy that it was such a good success. Yes, a bit of technicalities happened, but it's okay. We're in the era of COVID. Everything is remote. So gradually we should adapt to the abnormalities of technology. So the first day is over, as I said. Tomorrow is another day, packed full of knowledge. Other so many speakers we have here to present to you knowledge on product-led growth. And tomorrow we start at 10 a.m. EST sharp. So do not miss it. We're expecting you all to join us, and have a nice day. Good night. And wherever you are, enjoy your day. Bye-bye from us. Bye.